Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison. Also got quite a few stories about the crazy stuff that actually happened when I was in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison and want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So this person, who I could say was a friend, was in the ADX. The place that Chapo is at. You can't tunnel out of there, it's underground. Shoot. He was at the ADX. I looked it up before doing this video. Come out a little later because I was looking up a few facts for it, and I'm going to do a whole lot longer one than this. But yeah, he was in the ADX, and he showed me the handbook from it, so I already knew he was. But seeing that you can easily look it up, yeah, he went by Ishmael. His born name was Randall, but you know, when he converted to Islam, Ishmael became his name. My first interaction with him was people knew that he had got put in our building at the low security, came from the medium security, and people that were at the medium security that knew that he was a Muslim, one of mostly just two white Muslims there. The other one, Muslim Bob, that's a whole story and a half. That dude was a chomo. This guy was not. This guy, I'll tell you about him. But anyway, in the low security, the beds that were not a steel sheet that you put your little tiny mat on. They were springs, so it just sunk down. It was much more comfortable. But my cellies quickly removed a whole bunch of the springs so then they wouldn't put them in our room. One of my cellies was staunch Republican. All he did was listen to political stuff all day long. Politics, I don't have a stance either side, I'm going to tell you. You know, one shoves it down your throat to your face, and one, you know, tries to stick it up the tailpipe when you turn around. So that's my thoughts on that. But anyhow, being that he listened, you know, he's got such term, he wasn't going to have this guy in our cell. The guy who I'm speaking of, Blue, big old country man, he wasn't going to have that. So he pulled a bunch of springs out all at once. And they were, sure enough, they tried to put him in our room. He said, "Hey, you can't sleep on that bed. There aren't any springs on the last foot of the bunk. Your feet will fall through." "Why aren't there any springs in the bed?" he said, and they put him in the room next to us. So it was kind of an odd, you know, first impressions type thing and stuff, and you could sense that he felt it too. And his first conversation he had with me was he came up to me and he said, shook my hand, introduced himself, and he said, "I just want to let you know, I'll be beating your deadlifting record." At that time, I had the highest deadlift out of the white people. The one who had it before me was a cop that was in for a hate crime, and I beat him out. Now, half the people liked that because he was a cop, but half the people didn't like it because my workout crew was black dudes that were from my area. I mean, that's who I got along with, man. JB, Justin Berger, shoot, man, that's my brother. I mean, seriously, I think of him like a brother. And same with Tim. You know, he's a good dude. He was actually in there with three brothers. Him and his two brothers, biological, were all in the same prison. But anyway, he never beat my deadlifting record. He did get up to a little over 500, but he didn't get anywhere close to 565. Big bone, muscular guy, very well spoken, very articulate. Now you think of a Muslim, you think of the beard. Shoot, when I first got to prison, everybody walking by me, "Salaam alaikum." I'm like, party on. You know, I guess I was like darker complected, you know, with the beard. I got that a lot. I also got, you know, people taught me in Spanish, everything else. I could be confused with about probably 10 different nationalities. But anyhow, I got to talking to him, and he said he'd been in the ADX. I was like, get out of here. Pulls out the paperwork. Now, he sued the BOP successfully. I don't know how to tell you how rare that is to sue the BOP for money. He won $100,000 from the Bureau of Prisons, which he got $33,000 of. The two lawyers got the rest of it. They deposit it right on his commissary account. That don't happen. He had the paperwork from it. He had the ADX handbook. And I'll tell you what he was in for and what he told me. You know, just the gist of it. The charges that he was charged with was, okay, it was to one count of aiding and abetting the use and discharge of a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence, and one count of aiding and abetting the carrying of an explosive during the commission of a felony. Yeah. He got sentenced to 240 months. 240 months. You know, those of you who aren't good at math, that's 20 years. He said that I believe he was in a prison in Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. And he was in a unit that was a communications variable unit, which means they're listening to every phone call. They're reading every piece of mail. And it's with people that are a high risk, you know, people that are high in positions of power in different gangs and terror inmates, okay, which he was classified as. Now, it sounded like there was a guy in his pod that was a snitch, that was telling on people. And, you know, he made it clear, you know, we're just going to go rough this guy with our hands, this and that. And from what he told me, they went to go rough him up, and one guy didn't listen to the hands thing, and he brought, I believe it was a lock. And it sounds like this guy got busted up bad, like he got really, really hurt. Now, they basically, from what he told me, they had him as like the leader of that group, which, you know, the violence, everything that happened, blew it out of proportion. It was just a snitch getting beat up. That happens in prison all the time. Because of his charges, though, they sent him to the ADX in Colorado, okay? And he told me a little bit about it. I'm going to briefly tell you, some of this. I'm going to do a longer video that's got a whole lot more facts and a whole lot of things that I can line up right that I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on, but I'm giving you the basics of this because this was something else. He said that as he went down in the prison, because, it's an underground prison, that he basically felt like he was being buried alive. Excuse me. He said it felt like he was being buried alive. He said it was an inexplicable feeling. From what he explained the cell was to me, it was a door. Then there was this fence thing. And then there was an area in between that. Then there was another fence thing. And he said you didn't get to have possession of your mail. That there's a TV in your room. And I was like, oh, that must have been nice. He said that was the one redeeming feature. He had a TV in his room, but the TV was behind glass, it wasn't like something he could touch. He'd have to read his mail on that TV. Didn't even get to have his mail in his hand, in case people write some code or something. Any type of stuff that'd be hidden in there. Yeah. Now, he has to see the psychiatrist, okay? Or maybe they made him see it, whatever. He said it was the most ridiculous thing because the psychiatrist comes in, and remember I said there's those two fence things in the door. He said the psychiatrist came in wearing a stab vest, and you'd expect the psychiatrist to just stand there and speak to him. As, I'm speaking to you. There's a fence in between him. What's he going to get? He's in a cell. He can't go nowhere. Okay? He said the psychiatrist came in between the two fence parts that was the entrance to his room, in a stance with the baton in his hand, and was broke down in the stance like this. Hello, how are you doing today, sir? And in a stance ready to pop if he was to break through that fence. He said it was comical because this guy's broke down in a ready war stance trying to counsel him. And he said that he told him, I don't understand why I'm here. They've really blown this out of proportion. I don't belong in the same category as Larry Hoover and the Unabomber, but I'm in the most secure prison in the world because of something that happens in prisons all across the country. I feel like this has gotten really blown out of proportion. And he said after he spilled his heart and his guts and told him about how he's feeling, that the psychiatrist guy said, oh, I'm going to let you know something. You're not special. You're not like anybody else in this prison. You're very different from the rest of the people in the world, people in other prisons. But you're just like everybody else here. You're not special, and you're not going to get treated any different than anybody else. Do you have any more questions for me today? Still broke down in his stance, and he's like, I guess not. And the guy left, okay? He said it was the most helpless feeling ever. He basically there was some confusion. I will talk about this in the next video, which is very well researched with all the facts lined up that I can put in a row. But basically, you know, he fought in Bosnia to help Bosnia fight against the Serbians. He went over there and he fought, and he believed in the cause and everything else. And I have to look it up, but from my understanding, there was no like terrorist stuff that he meant on this country. Like, he loved the Bosnian people. Okay, he went over there and he helped, you know. I have to look it up, you know, just to get 100% of it right. But from my understanding, he was just trying to help Bosnia fight for their independence. But you can't do that. There was a name of a camp of a person that matched a name of somebody else that had passed away that was a high-powered terror person. It sounded like kind of a miscommunication, and it actually, certain stuff was proven in court about that. But basically, he was trying to get a few people. They were training over here in Virginia, playing paintball to train warlike scenarios. And that ultimately is what got him 20 years in federal prison. The explosive part, I have to look up more on that. And like I said, I am going to do a longer video on this, but this is an actual person who was at the ADX in Colorado. I had a lot of conversations with. A lot of conversations. He was literally, we were in a dormitory type setting with cubicle dividers, which are never locked down. Okay, he would tutor people. He's a GED tutor. He actually, Justin Berger, JB, who I talked about, he tutored JB. JB can tell you about him. Shoot, I forgot about that. He says some funny stuff, JB, too. I'm going to get him to bring that up. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to let JB say it out of his mouth. Because I remember JB saying, I have an odd memory for things. Certain things that crack me up, upset me, and things that I find interesting are burned into my brain. There was something funny he said to JB, but I don't want to say it without JB saying it. And he'll remember what I'm talking about. But anyway, this is one interesting person that I have many stories about. You don't see a whole lot of white Muslims in prison. Now, each person, their faith, whatever, you know, I think it's none of my business. I don't judge anybody for anything, you know. I'm cool with anybody for anything, you know. Of course, if I find out somebody's awful, you know, terror-related stuff. But from my understanding about him, that wasn't the case at all. Okay? So, I'll break that down. But being a white Muslim in prison, white people ain't going to like you too much. That's why my cellies took that bed apart real quick. I was laughing at them because they were like hurrying, but they worked in maintenance, so they were quick with it. And they pulled them springs out. They got rid of them, so he had to go to the next cell. Actually kept us from getting a cellmate for a good long time until they put in a work order to fix that bed. But anyway, it's just kind of like a brief introduction. I want to see what the interest is of this. There are different people that I meet. See, in federal prison, what's very interesting that sets it apart from state prison, especially Petersburg. Petersburg was not just a place. The medium had 40% chomos, okay? They had a program for them there. But it also had some of the biggest drug dealers in the world, okay? Sean Pentard, on record, was selling 2,000 kilos a year, 500 every 3 months. He made me seafood fritters. He became my buddy. At a chain of restaurants, man, Sean has a wild story. There was Ali Sabunchi, who was traded back for U.S. sailors that were captured in Iran waters and an Iranian prisoner exchange. There were people that have some wild stories that I met there. People get sent all over the place in the feds. He'd been all the way out to the ADX in Colorado, then all the way back, and ended up at the low, at Petersburg Low. That's where I knew him personally at. You know, at the medium, I'm sure we passed and everything else, but I didn't know him like that there. He ended up my same side of the building. You know, interesting people. I ask them questions. So I got a few stories about him. Good handful. The specifics of the case, I've got to look that up because I don't want to say anything that I don't have correct. You know, if he's willing, I'll get him on here. I doubt he's going to want to come on a channel called The Dope Sick Show, though. He's like, you know, man of principle and all that type of stuff. And a lot of people, that name kind of gets them. So kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit with that. The Dope Sick Show. Not everybody's cool with that. But anyway, that's the end of it. If you liked it, press the like button. If not, it's 14 minutes and 44 seconds of your life, which you'll never get back. I plan on doing a video more on this tomorrow. Like tomorrow at 5 o'clock, that's when I plan on having this up. I just want to make sure I get some of the facts right, you know. It's only fair to him. It's only fair to y'all. I want to know what I'm talking about. I know my experiences, but the stuff that happened before that he was in there for, I want to make sure I get those facts right. I mean, it's the only right way to do it. So anyway, I hope you liked it.